My name is Gilbert Enriquez. I'm a candidate for mayor of the city of Edinburg, and I'm here with Necessary News, and I thank Mr. Josh for allowing me the opportunity to come in and talk with him, and I look forward to having more of these conversations. Thank you.
I always do triple checks, make sure.
Right.
Can't be too safe.
You never know.
That's it.
Okay,
Good to go?
yeah, everything's rolling.
Alrighty. Mr. Enriquez, thank you for taking your time to be here on a Saturday. I really appreciate you sitting down with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Well, first, tell me about the campaign. How it's going, and what you've been up to. Any progress you've made?
Yes, it's going well. Getting positive feedback from the community. The general public has really been very responsive to the message that I've been displaying out there in the public, in the social media. And me being out there, been receiving a lot of positive feedback. So I'm very humbled that the people have seen what I've done the 3 years that I've been there, and my messaging that I'm committed to during this campaign. So I'm very appreciative.
Yes, sir. Did you expect that when you first started? Did you think that's the kind of reception you'd be getting?
You know, when you decide to enter into this journey here, you never know what to expect, and so that's why I'm very humbled by the acceptance that I've received so far. So, you know, I always say, you know, leave it in God's hands. Whatever He has planned for me and for the community of Edinburg it will be evident come November 2nd.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, let's start with this. Tell me about yourself, your experience, your family life, and any former positions that you've had.
Okay. Well, I have an accounting degree, so I'm involved in accounting for my firm, for my company. I also have been in the construction business for 25 years. We have a family-owned business. I've been operating and running that business since 2009. So it's a very important that, you know, it's a family-oriented company. A lot of my employees have been with me for a very long time, for years. So I'm very proud of that. You know, so it's important that I have a good relationship with my employees, and so it's, like I said, it's a family-oriented environment. A lot of these my employees have been with me for a very, very long time, and I'm appreciative of everything that they've done for me and the company. So I've also been a public servant before. I used to serve on the Edinburgh School Board back in 2000, from 2000 to 2006. At that time, those were 3-year terms. I served 2 terms, and I decided I would not seek a third term. I've always said, you know, 2 terms is enough for any elected official, and so I truly believe that, and so I definitely do what I say. You know?
Yes, sir. Follow that principle.
Follow that principle. Exactly. Thank you. And so, you know, at that time I was 26 when I was elected, so I was one of the youngest, or I am the youngest, I think to this day, school board member that has ever been elected. So I'm very proud of that. You know, at 26, you know, you're still young, you're still going through, you know, your maturities and stuff. So it was a very, very good experience for me back then, and I learned a lot. You know, so it was very, very good for me in my profession, in my growing as an individual, and so it just gave me a better sense of giving back to my community. So that was very important to me. And then so since then, I've been working on my business, after 2006, and then 2017, I decided to run for city council, and I was lucky enough to be elected, and I served there for 3.5 years, and here we are today. We're running a campaign for mayor.
Yes, sir. So you do have the experience. It's definitely evident, and I want to ask you about your time at the city council, and specifically, I want to know about the culture there, as far as the workplace environment. Was it an easy place to work amid the scandal that was happening at the time, with like Molina being allegedly indicted for voter fraud? How did that affect morale and just the day-to-day of the culture?
Yeah, I mean, you can speculate, but that's something that, it's in each individual that works there. I mean, they have to work there. Me being there as a council member, I was there to do a job, and the job was to help the community as a whole, and fight for transparency, fight for accountability, fight for the individual citizen out there. And everything else, all the background noise, everything that really didn't play a part in my decision making, or how I conducted myself in those meetings. I did what I set out to do, and that was to be transparent, to be accountable to my constituents, and hold everyone else accountable. I asked questions regardless if the questions were difficult. I felt that I owed that to the public, so they could know what was happening in their city. And that has helped me during this campaign, because I've received a lot of feedback on that. A lot of people have come up to me and told me, without you asking those questions, I wouldn't have known. Or I get people coming up to me and say, I had that same exact question that you had, and I'm glad you asked it. So that is important. When you go to these meetings, regardless of the environment, you have to ask those questions. You have to have that dialogue, and it has to be professional, right? I mean, you have to be able to question things and ask of your colleagues there that are sitting there next to you those tough questions. I mean, that's part of having a good, healthy discussion, right? So everyone can know everybody's position on a certain agenda item. So I felt very, very comfortable there. I know there was a lot of things going on, but if you're there to be a public servant, then everything falls into place.
Yes, sir. And yeah, I could definitely see that, because I've known you since you were sitting there, and I could see that you really stuck by your principles throughout the entire time. But I'm kind of wondering, as a whole, was the city detracted? Like, were we veered off course? Not you individually, but the way government functions as a whole. Do you think that was affected, or do you think everything kept running smoothly?
No, absolutely. I mean, there was, of course, you're going to have some transitions. We went through 3 city managers. Actually, the current city manager it would have been the 4th city manager in less than 3 years, and so that's a high turnover, especially in a position of that magnitude. I mean, that's your leader. I mean, that person operates the day-to-day of the city. So, when you go through that turnover in any business, when you have high turnover, it's hard to transition, right? It's hard to stay on task and to get everything that you've planned implemented. So in that sense, yes. And then, of course, your employees, they expect continuity. And when you have that high turnover, you don't have it. So it's hard for them to adjust, and you can't blame employees when they don't know what's going on, who's leading who, or having to change from, because every city manager has their own philosophy on how to lead, right? So it's hard for the employees to transition from one city manager's philosophy to the other. So our staff has done a wonderful job of just trying to keep everything afloat and heading in the right direction. Our employees are great. I mean, if they have a good leader, they're going to do what's best for the city as a whole. So I'm very confident that our city staff that they've done a great job in the time that they've been there, regardless of the transition from city manager to city manager. So.
Just to put it into perspective, can you explain just a quick summary of the authority of the city manager and how it's so detrimental to just be flipping with that high turnover rate? Like, what are the effects of that, and what decisions are they making, and how is that a detriment to the public interest?
Right. I mean, they run the day-to-day operations. They hire employees. They create the budgets, or the city managers create the budgets. They come to city council for approval on projects that they know that they need. They come to us with assessments of different aspects of our city, like infrastructure, drainage, parks, new quality of life projects that they want to that the city manager wants to bring to fruition. So, the city manager has a lot of responsibility and has a lot of authority. And so, like I said, each city manager that you have has a different philosophy, and having the high turnover we did the first 3 years, it's difficult to get any kind of continuity.
Yeah, in any really job or any company, I feel like that would be difficult.
Right.
Okay, here's the next one. If you had to choose one issue in Edinburg, the single most important issue that needs to be addressed right now, what would it be?
Well, it would have to be, in my opinion, taxes. I truly believe our tax rate is way too high. For a city our size and the city that is growing as fast as Edinburg, I believe our tax rate is just too high. And I really believe that you can lower that tax rate. At the very least 10% that first year, because we just have tremendous growth. And I want to make it clear to everyone that even during the pandemic, Edinburg saw a positive growth rate, even during the pandemic. And that's unheard of, right? Because everything closed down. And there wasn't as many people going to restaurants, going to retail stores and buying stuff, but Edinburg still had a positive growth rate even during the pandemic. So that speaks volumes of the type of growth that Edinburg has experienced over the last 20 years. And so I just truly believe that we got to relieve some of that tax burden off our citizens. They work hard. We all work hard for our money, and it's important to give some tax relief to our citizens. And so I think that's the main priority that we as a council should tackle in the next year. And before the election, we're gonna have to approve a tax rate. And I can guarantee you that there's going to be, the current mayor and the current council are going to come, and they're going to decrease the tax rate, and they're going to say, look at what we've done. We've decreased your tax rate right before election. Okay, but let's just put everything in perspective. If you go back to the videos since I was elected in 2017, every year I was advocating for lower taxes, and no one on that council that's current that came in with me ever voiced any advocacy for lowering taxes, And so I want the public to understand that, people, when they're running for office, they say a lot of things and they do a lot of things just to get those votes. But with me, I can tell you that I've talked the talk, I've walked the walk. I don't just say things just so I can get someone's vote. I actually do what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah, you got the receipts. Yeah,
Right.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I'm not sure if this is accurate, but I had heard our tax rate hadn't been increased in like over 2 decades until just recently, right? Is that true? Okay.
Right. It hadn't been increased, and it hadn't been lowered. Okay. It's been maintained for I would say almost 30 years. Wow. And you can see from back then to now, Edinburg has just grown. And so there's a correlation between growth and tax rate, right? When you have growth, you should have a lower tax rate. I mean, that's just common sense. The more growth you have, the less your tax rate should be. Any city across Edinburg or across the valley our size, Edinburg has the highest tax rate, and that to me is just unacceptable.
Yeah, that goes against the principle of higher growth, lower taxes.
Right. And so, and going back to your question, the reason why it went up was because when I was on the council, we needed to alleviate some of the drainage issues that we've had, some of the flooding. So we went to the public and we asked them to pass a $30 million bond. 20 million of that was going into drainage, and 10 million was going into streets. And so we decided at that time that we would leave it up to the public to determine whether they wanted a bond passed to increase their taxes. And I believe we increased our taxes 5 cents. Okay, even at that time, we could have still, even increasing 5 cents at that time, we could have decreased our tax rate. Even increasing it because of the bond, we could have decreased the M&O side of the maintenance and operation side of the tax rate if we wanted to. But I was the only one at the time advocating for it, and nobody wanted to touch lowering the tax rate. But what we could have done is lowered the tax rate, even with increasing the INS, the interest and sinking fund tax rate, because of the bond that was passed.
I see.
Right.
Since we're talking about taxes, and you want to lower them, and I feel like a lot of the city's gotten comfortable to the services that we have now that are being paid for with that tax increase. So if we want to lower taxes, we're going to lose a little bit of tax revenue. So I'm wondering, do you find any departments that you think should be trimmed, or how would you go about lowering taxes without reducing like kind of public services and things like that?
See, well, my experience as an accountant, I know budgets. Yes, sir. And I know how to allocate funding for each department. And it's funny that you say that, how can we maintain the services that we currently have with lowering the tax? Well, the way we do it is because of our growth, right? As many as these new subdivisions that everyone sees popping up everywhere in the city of Edinburg, that creates more revenue. Okay, that not only creates tax revenue, property tax revenue, but it also creates utility revenue, because they got to purchase water, they got to purchase sewer, they got to purchase sanitation. So each and every new home that's built here, or new business that's opened here, that increases our property tax revenue and our utility revenue. So with that growth, you can still maintain and upgrade your services and lower your tax rate.
Interesting.
So it's not like let's say you have a 3 or 4% tax rate. You have a 3 or 4% growth rate in 1 year. That doesn't mean you're going to lower your tax rate by 3 or 4%. That just means you're going to lower your tax rate comparable to the 3 to 4% growth rate. I see. So you have to understand how tax revenue and expenditures and increased revenue, how all that works in order for you to maintain the level of services that you currently have and upgrade some of these departments. Because as you grow as a city, you're going to have to grow your departments, right? Mm-hmm. Specifically public safety. You know, public safety, the more people we have, we got to increase more officers, more firefighters, you know, so that's going to increase. You know, so those are the things that that someone with the background in accounting, budgeting, finance is going to be bringing that insight. So when we're discussing budgets, we ask those intelligent questions on how we can manage, or how can we allocate for here, or how can we upgrade here, or where can we cut expenses. You know, those are the things that that someone with experience and qualifications bring that insight, and I believe that I have that.
No, definitely, and it really makes sense the way you explain it. But I'm wondering, is there a part of the funds that are being allocated to all these different entities and city government that's fraud? Is there fraud and abuse? I'm not saying that you're aware of it, but is it something that happens in the city? And specifically, I want to talk about the police department, because that's our biggest piece of the pie when it comes to our city budget. And all the issues our department's had recently, do you think it's a good idea to be bolstering them right now and like increasing their budget?
Well, I personally believe public safety is important for all our citizens, right? And I believe that that you should increase funding each year for our public safety, and that includes our fire department and our police department. Now, what I would say about, you know, your question about the fraud and all that, I would hope that is not happening, right? And I can tell you, and I can assure you that before I left office, we hired an internal auditor. Okay, that internal auditor is there specifically to watch our books, right? To make sure that everything is done according to our policies and our procedures and the law. You know, procurement laws, just the law, accounting, the accounting laws that we have, that everything is done accordingly, right? And so I advocated for that. It took a long time to get an auditor approved and hired. And it wasn't until our current city manager came in that brought in that internal auditor. But that right there will help curtail a lot of that distrust, if there's distrust out there in the community, because that internal auditor is there to look at those, issues, to look at those potential, complaints or fraud or anything of that nature, and also to manage, or not manage, but what's the word I'm looking for? For the internal auditor also looks at the council to make sure that we're approving things that need to be approved, and that we're approving them based on our ordinances and our policies. So that has a checks and balances for us too. It's not just administration, it's for the council as well. So that internal auditor is very, very important, in my opinion, to bring back that integrity, the ethics back to our city. So the people, the citizens of Edinburg can feel a trust in their elected officials and in their city government.
Absolutely, and I love the idea of a city auditor, and that was something that I would advocate for as well. I don't see how not every city has that. It just seems like an obvious thing. Right. But as far as going back to the police, I know they audit, but do they audit only like city funds and just like tax revenue made in Edinburg, or are they also looking at like federal grants and things of that nature?
Yes, the internal auditor looks at anything. So they have access to all the departments, all the files. So if they get a complaint, from someone on staff or even a community member, they can go in and look and they have access to all the files and all the transactions, everything, where the money is going, how it's being received, how it's being deposited, how the monies are being dispersed. I mean, they have access to all that information. That's what an internal auditor does. So if there's a complaint, that internal auditor can go in and do an investigation on their own. And they're so an audit is where it's a paper trail. You follow the paper. It's hard when you're an auditor. You have the experience, you have the education, you have the certifications to follow that paper trail. Okay, and so that tells that internal auditor that you might be telling me something over here, but the paper is going to tell me exactly what's going on. And so that's why I advocated for an internal auditor, because in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. I mean, for you to gain the trust of the community, you have to have those checks and balances. And one of them was having an internal auditor on staff and creating that check and balance procedure.
Definitely. And with your background with econ construction and building buildings and things like that, I think you're in a unique position to answer this next question. And it goes back to not fraud, but waste. So I understand the auditor looks at where the money's going and things, and she can follow the paper trail. But what happens when that equipment that's bought is used in a manner it's not supposed to be? And we've talked about this before, but I want to show you the video now of one of those police towers that we bought. And hi, my name is Josh, sir, and I'm a real estate developer, and we're doing a subdivision right now, and I was wondering how I can get one of those police towers out here to watch kind of the development and stuff.
I mean, I can move it there for a little while. I'll see if I have one available. They're not really meant for that, but I can see if I can move it over there.
Will it cost me anything, or?
No, it doesn't cost you anything. Just so you'll understand how it works, we bought them under a grant through what's called Stone Garden Grant, and that has to do with the Border Patrol and Customs, and that's what we use them for. But let me see, because I know sometimes we send them to problem areas and stuff, and then we justify it with you having gang activity, drug problem, or illegal trafficking. Let me see how I can move them over there to your side. Where exactly is the neighborhood?
Just wanted to get ahead of the game and kind of find out how I can get one of those.
I mean, I can move it there for a little while. Maybe you can call me back once you start your construction and all that stuff. And maybe they see a tower that deters some criminal activity, some thefts and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'll put it back, and then I'll move it out. That's what we usually do.
Yeah, so I can just kind of justify by saying there's some like illegal activity here and stuff, and you'll be able to put it out here.
Yeah, It depends on the legal activity, but yeah, I'll figure out something.
Alrighty, and all right, what was your name again, sir?
Lieutenant Sepulveda.
All right. Yeah, so that's my concern, because I understand that there is these paper trails and stuff, but if it's the biggest part of our budget, I just feel like, I mean, an auditor's great, but they have so many different departments to be looking into. As the biggest part of our budget, should there be an auditor dedicated to the police department to make sure that they're doing the right thing?
Well, I mean, that internal auditor can conduct audits on any department at any given time, and they'll have a staff, they'll have assistants. Okay, so they'll be able to conduct multiple audits of different departments.
Okay.
So I don't. Yeah. So that's not. So that won't be the issue. The issue you had talked about, if equipment were to be used what it was intended for and all that. That's exactly what an auditor would investigate, right, or review, and see if the equipment that was purchased that is being used for the intended purpose. I mean, everything that comes to the council for approval, it has an intended purpose, right? There are certain instances, I will say, that you use equipment for other things. And those are usually for emergency basis. Like if we have a flood, right? And we need to evacuate people. Well, we're gonna go and we're gonna use equipment from one of our other departments to come supplement over to help the community, right? That's a given. That's considered an emergency, right? But if that equipment is being used for personal use or for someone's private property or something like that, well, then that's where you start getting into that gray area, right? And that's where the internal auditor will say, hey, you know, you're misusing the equipment. It's not supposed to be used for that, and so on and so forth. And so there's procedures to follow when that happens. So, you know, I guess my point is that an internal auditor is gonna review all these different things going on in each department, and then it's just a process that happens. And when you get to the findings, then you got to go through the policies that we have in place for any of that, any of those issues that arise.
Awesome. Yeah, I like it, man. I really like that idea. Are they independent, that auditor, or do they work for the city? Or?
They work for the city. They're employee. That person is an employee, and he reports back to the city manager and to the city council. So it's like not so much like the city attorney, because we don't hire the city auditor unless we go to the voters and ask them to give us the approval to hire the city auditor, internal auditor under us. But right now, the way it's our policy reads is that it's the city manager has authority over the internal auditor.
I see. Okay, well, let's go back to the econ and your experience here. Do you think it's a tactical advantage, if elected mayor, that you understand like civil engineering and specifically to help mitigate flooding?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, you have to understand infrastructure, drainage. You have to understand the drainage canals that we have. You know, the drainage district's role in all this. You know, the county, I should say, the county drainage district. So you have to have knowledge in all that, right? And you have to have the ability to work with all these other government entities so you can combine those resources, right? Because the city of Edinburgh can't fix the drainage by ourselves. We can do our part, and we started doing our part when I was there. You know, that's why we went out and we asked the voters to approve $20 million of drainage, and that design was to be that money was going to be used for design of detention ponds, right? And what detention ponds do is they hold the water. When it rains, the water collects into that detention pond, and it stays there until we let it out into our drainage systems to where it can get to the drainage district's canals. And that helps alleviate the overflowing of the drainage, the district drainage canals. And so that's how you can help alleviate the flooding in our city. We hold it in our city for a while before we release it into the main drainage canal. And so we had that planned, and we told the public this is what we were going to do. And the public said, okay, you know what? We agree, we pass it. But then, you know, when the bonds were passed, and we sold the bonds, and we were getting ready to hire engineers, you know, the current council, or I shouldn't say the current council, the past council, and the three that I went in with, or the two that I went in with, decided that they were going to hire a project management firm to handle the entire $30 million. Wasn't going to do any design. All that person was going to do was get a paper from the engineers of record, and then pass it over to the city. So basically, that person was just going to be a paper pusher. wasn't going to have any input on the design or anything like that, right? So in my opinion, that was a waste of tax dollars. Well, right. Well, when that person was hired to justify their fee, I guess, they decided that, you know what, we're going to change what we told the voters we were going to do. We told the voters we were going to do detention, but now we're going to do laterals. We're going to lay pipe and we're going to connect to the drainage district canal. Well, that wasn't what we told the voters we were going to do. Again, this is transparency, right? And accountability. So when that was brought to us, I raised the question of, hey, did we ask the bond counsel that if this was okay for us to do, for us to change the parameters of the bond? Well, when they finally said, no, we haven't asked, my question was, well, I think we should ask, don't you? And so they did, and it came back to us that we had violated the terms of the bond. So we could have lost those $30 million. The bondholders could have revoked that money and said, I want my money back. So that is why when we passed it in 2018, we're barely finishing up the designs and going out for bid. So 3 years later, we're starting to implement that drainage. And you know this, in the 3 years from 2018 to 2021, we've had many, many flood events here in the city of Edinburg. A lot of flooding has happened. So if we would have done it correctly the first time back in 2018, we could have alleviated a lot of those flooding issues. A lot of those homes that were flooded, that could have been curtailed. And I blame that. I blame that on our current council, or I shouldn't say a current council. I blame that on the previous council and the two that went in with me, because this could have been avoided. But again, it was all politics. It was all about, giving contracts to people that didn't need to be giving contracts to. And so again, I preach accountability. I preach transparency, and I was trying to give that to the public. And thank God that that they're finally on the right track.
Mm-hmm. So let me just make sure I understand, because there's two different entities, right, responsible for the flood water. It's us as a city, and then the county's drainage canals, correct? Correct. And with the detention pond plan, we would have been able to hold on to our water until it was time to release it into these drainage canals that the county controls, right? Correct. But instead of doing that, we had pipes that would just lead straight to these drainage canals. So then we lost that ability to hold back that water, and that's what's causing like an overflow.
Right. Basically, you'd be contributing to the overflow of the drainage canals. If they would have done what they had changed the bond to, which is doing laterals and connecting pipe to the drainage, basically you would have just created a bigger overflow, a bigger problem.
So they would have spent $30 million to increase flooding, basically.
Basically. Yeah. Because everything to the west of Edinburg, all that water flows into Edinburg. Just like the water from Edinburg flows into Ed Couch Elsa, La Villa, all those small towns until it gets to the main drainage canal, right? So everything flows in one direction. And if the entire Rio Grande Valley is under a hurricane, well, that means it's raining everywhere. So that means everything is going into that canal and flowing west, okay? So if you can't hold your water, if the city can't hold some of the water in its own city, then just imagine. You're gonna have so much water just flowing, and when it can't flow, it starts to rise, and that's where it backs up and it overflows the canals and it gets into the houses. And I mean, it's just a horrible situation to be in. And I feel for those people that have lost their homes the last 3 years. They lose it the first time, they fix it, and then another rain event happens and they lose it again. They got to go through that same whole process. And that's not right. That's not right. It's not acceptable. Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. So we have to do our part as elected officials. And again, you need a mayor that understands drainage. Not that, oh, we're gonna fix the drainage. No, you gotta have a mayor that understands it and is gonna ask those intelligent questions of the professionals that we hire to do the design, right? I mean, it's always good to have a healthy dialogue, right? You gotta ask the questions. If you're just there to hold your hand up, yes or no, and that's it, with no discussion, no dialogue, no interaction, no suggestions, no comments or anything, then you're doing the community a disservice. There's no reason for you to be there. There's really not.
No, and I see that so much where it's just brought to a vote. All right, raise your hand, move on.
Without discussion. Right, and nobody knows what you voted on. Taxpayer doesn't know what's going on. And that's not, and that to me is not good government.
It's terrible government.
And really, I'll tell you this: governing is not that hard. It really isn't. If you govern with common sense, I mean, it's really not that hard. It's not.
Yeah, if you just stick by.
Right, and if you're there, right, to do the right thing, it's really not that hard.
Right, it seems like it's just an easy playbook. Just do the right thing.
Right thing, exactly. And of course, you're gonna have difficult decisions, right? But that's what you're elected to do, is make those difficult decisions and own your decisions and justify your decisions. But you gotta have that discussion and dialogue so the public can know where each public official stands on that issue, on whatever issue it is.
Definitely. And speaking of tough decisions, here are some questions. COVID-19. I was hoping by the time we sat down again, we wouldn't have to be talking about this, but do you have any events coming up, and have you rethought your approach to those events since there's been this uptick in COVID cases?
We have some planned for next month, and we're debating whether or not to hold those depending on the situation with COVID and the increases in cases. But I can tell you, I'm not going to jeopardize myself, my family, my supporters, the general public, just to hold a function, a political function. That's not important. A political function is not important. You know, there's a lot more important issues that the city and each individual has, right? So I don't believe that that's an important function to have. And so, you know, depending when we get closer to where we have some events planned in September, I'll make the decision whether we're going to proceed with those events or we're going to cancel those events. But I'm not going to just have an event because I'm running for office. To me, it's not about me. It's about my community, right? And so I'm not going to jeopardize my community just so I can get elected. I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Do you think it's important for leaders like city council members to be more vocal and to be advocating about getting vaccinated? Because I'm not really seeing that at that level where they're making like social media posts telling people that, yeah, you need to get vaccinated. It's kind of, if you want it, get it. If not, like, there's no sense of urgency coming from our leadership in Edinburg, and I feel like that trickles down to the rest of the community. If our leaders aren't concerned about it, why should we be? Right,
and that's a good point. That's a very good point. Now, I differ on that opinion. I have a different opinion on that. I truly believe it's a choice that each individual needs to make. I don't feel that I should infringe my beliefs on others. To me, it's up to them. It's a personal decision between them and their family. And I'm vaccinated. All my family's vaccinated. I wear a mask even though I don't have to. If I feel that I need to wear and protect myself and my family, I'll wear a mask. And so I don't think it's the job of city council to make those recommendations as a council member, but you can definitely make those suggestions as an individual.
Definitely.
I don't see that as a role for city government to take on, because that's more of a social aspect, a social issue, and that's not what city government does. So individually, they can advocate for it or not, but as a city council member, I don't think it would be in their best interest.
Okay. Yeah, just a few more. These are going to be random. Why do you think long form discussions like we're having are important for the public to see?
Oh, they're very important. And I appreciate you inviting me to this, because I mean, I think it gives an insight to who the person really is. And so the public can understand who's running, who are their candidates that they're going to choose from, and what they represent, and to see if they're authentic. You know, because when you're having a dialogue like this, I mean, you can tell who's being authentic and who's not, right? I mean, you can tell who's being, forthright and forthcoming with their answers, and who's trying to skirt around the answers, you know. And so that says a lot about the person's character, right? And I truly believe that it's important for the citizens, the voters of Edinburg, to know where each of their candidates stand on issues. And if you don't, then you're just going to be trying to what's that saying, shooting in the dark, trying to see who you're going to go for, and I don't think that serves the public as a whole. You know, it doesn't serve them well.
Yeah, and that's why I started, because I realized most people choose by who's on the banners, how many banners they see outside, and I want to give people a chance to really get to know you people. No, I totally.
But I don't see why he wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, this is a form of getting your message out, and it's important, like I said.
Yeah, the reason why is 'cause he's still doing interviews, but he's doing it by like Edinburg City Media, so they're just softballing him the whole time. Two more things. Can you give us a closing statement that you'd want your potential voters to hear from you?
Yeah, definitely. I want the public to understand that I'm there for the right reasons. I'm not there for any political faction. Not there for self-interest. I'm not there for any political group or entities out there. I'm there for the people, for the entire community of Edinburg, and I think I've shown that while I was there as a council member. All I want is transparency and accountability. And I think if you have those characteristics in your city is going to prosper, because the public is going to feel comfortable. They're gonna feel that sense of trust. They're gonna know that you're making the best decision for the community as a whole. So I see that that's a role of a public servant, to provide those characteristics, and so I believe that I've shown that in the 3.5 years that I've been there, and I will continue to fight. I will continue to fight for every single person, whether they're supporters of mine or opponents of mine. It doesn't matter. I'm going to treat everyone fairly. I'm going to treat everyone the same. I'm going to work hard for them, because I believe that if you're there to do the right thing, everybody's going to prosper. Everybody will benefit. It's not going to be just one segment of the population. It's going to be the entire population of Edinburg, and that's what it's all about. It shouldn't be that because you supported me, you're going to get a better treatment than the person that didn't support me. That's not being fair. that's not being equitable. And so I don't believe in that. And anybody can go and look in the videos and the meetings that were there, and they can see the difference. They can see the difference all for themselves with their eyes, and then make their judgment at that point. And then we'll see how it works after that. But I'm here I can assure the public that I will fight for them. I will be transparent. I will hold everyone accountable, including myself. I'll hold myself accountable, and bring ethics back to our city. That's important.
That's great to hear, man. Well, thank you very much for
Sir, thank you.
this interview.
Thank you.
I'm really excited. This was a great one.
So am I. Cut.
Yeah, you're good. Cut. Sorry.